So again, we're looking at creation, foundation of time, day 1. Jah made the sun, moon, and stars on day 4. But remember the count. Jah was counting from day 1 in order to get to day 7. When Jah made the sun, moon, and stars, he never restarted the count and said, all right, well, now this is day 1 and this is day 2 and move from there. No, it's within the creation week, in particular, the exact middle. But Jah begins his counting from day 1. Right? That's how it works. So again, this is a foundational understanding. So when we're getting to Abib, the first month, which we say is equivalent to February, it's the latter rains, harvest, spring, Passover, crucifixion, and resurrection are all in this month. We have our 7 days, and the Gregorian calendar understanding has their names of the 7 days of the week. Jah's Almanac is not, of course, a Gregorian calendar, but you have to be wise, and understand that, they put names on it. They're God's names on these things. All right, so let's look at the first week of creation. Remember, we're going slow. Day 1 of creation was Abib 1, week 1, month 1, season 1, year 1 starts. And then that means day 2 of creation would be Abib 2. We're still in week 1, we're still in month 1, we're still in season 1, year 1. And as we go through, right, we even get to day 4. This is not the beginning of creation. And this, again, why I have the X here, because people say that this is the beginning of the month and the beginning of the Most High's calendar.
Wrong.
Wrong. Absolutely wrong. I mean, we're counting, family. Let's continue, though. So, I mean, we can go through all of it. We get to the day 7, obviously would be Abib 7, the end of week 1. We're still in month 1, season 1, and year 1, right? This is the first Sabbath. The Sabbath is coming from day 1. The Most High made it holy, nothing to do with the sun, moon, or stars. And it also goes with Leviticus chapter 23. Take note.
Leviticus 23, verse 3. 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest. On holy convocation, you shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of Jah in all your dwellings.
Okay, so what I want to show you is that when you're looking at Leviticus chapter 23, from the very first verses going all the way through to the end, you're getting a list of the holy days as they appear in their chronological order throughout the year.
That's
so
right.
The first festival, obviously, so let's say a year begins. What would be the first festival?
The Sabbath day.
Sabbath day. Just like it says in Leviticus chapter 23, verse 3. That would be the first festival that you would come upon in the year. That only makes sense. See, Leviticus chapter 23 fits in perfectly to give us days and dates. So again, we have the first week of creation. We have a lot of scriptures. These scriptures referring to the 7-day Sabbath and how you must count it. We have Leviticus chapter 23 we just read. Read it again just so we can see, again, we're dealing with the beginning of the year.
That's right. Leviticus chapter 23, verse 1. And Jah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them concerning the feasts of Jah, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations. Even these are my feasts. 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest. And holy convocation you shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of Jah in all your dwellings.
So, all right. We're counting now, right? We've gone through our first week, Abib 7. Now, what comes after Abib 7? What would be Abib 8 or the next week? So it says Abib 8, week 2. So family, I mean, we're just counting here using our wisdom and common sense. And obviously, after the 7th day Sabbath that Jah made, Adam and Eve, it's not like, the weekly cycle stopped there. There was just the pattern, the foundation. And now we know after that 7-day Sabbath, what's going to come after that? The first day of the next week. And
That's
if
right.
if we know how to count, Abib 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, what comes after 7?
8.
We have Abib 8 starting the following week, which is going to be week 2. Then we go through Abib 9, 10, 11, 12. So now the second Sabbath, when does that come on? Abib 14.
14.
Remember reading something about Abib 14 somewhere in Leviticus chapter 23 and Abib 15?
Yeah, regarding the Passover.
Passover, right? So right off the bat, look at how we're building this. We're building it 7, and another 7, using the weekly cycle as our standard.
See the simplicity of Jah's counting system. Right now, you are looking at the first 14 days of the first month.
That's right.
These are the feasts of Jah, even holy convocations, which you shall proclaim in their seasons. In the 14th day of the first month, at even, is Jah's Passover. And on the 15th day of the same month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread unto Jah. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread.
Okay, so stick with us now. The 7 days of Sabbath, we have our Abib 7, and then after 7 plus 7 is 14. And notice what's coming up next, the very next week. Look at that. The 7-day Sabbath in Leviticus chapter 23, and then you have the 14th day. Praise Jah. And then the 15th going into the next week. So I'm saying you're getting Jah's Almanac in Leviticus 23, giving you our dates and days of the week perfectly.
That's right.
Going from the foundation of Jah. So you can start to see now the formulation as it comes together. So we have the 7th day, we have the 14th day, and the 15th day of the month mentioned in Leviticus chapter 23.
That's right.
And we can know that 14th day right here in verse 5, when it says Jah's Passover, that 14th day is the Sabbath. When it says Jah's Passover, though, people think that means that's the festival. But when you, and I'm going to cover it too, when you look at this understanding, it's talking about the Passover sacrifice. So the festival and the sacrifice are two different things. And you just have to read in context to know what it's about. And even if you look up the definition of the word Passover, Peshach, and even in the Greek, it deals with either the festival or the actual lamb. So when it says in the 14th day of the first month at evening is Jah's Passover, it should really be 14th day of the first month at evening, the end of the 14th day, because it's a 7-day Sabbath, is the sacrifice of Jah's Passover lamb. Right? That's what it is. But we'll prove it as we go through. Just want to continue. We just read in the 14th day of the first month at evening is Jah's Passover, the sacrifice. So this is the beginning of the evening of the 14th, so to speak, because we're going from evening, then it means the end of the evening. Some people think that it's the evening is the beginning of the 14th, but it wouldn't make no sense. And you'll see, as we're going to show a little bit more, that it has to be the end of the 14th. First of all, it's a 7-day Sabbath, and as it's ending and the sun is touching the horizon, they kill the lamb. And as they kill the lamb, by the time the sun sets a few minutes later, 4 or 5 minutes later, so to speak, what day are we going into? The next 15th. Day, the 15th day. This is why we have here. So it's really, at evening is Jah's Passover sacrifice of the lamb, not the festival, family. That's where people get tripped up. That's a main point here I'm bringing forth. People think that means the festival. You have to kill the lamb before you eat it. So you can't, this is here talking about killing the lamb, letting the blood drain out, and then you have to get ready to cook it that night, just like they did in ancient Egypt when they left, when the Israelites left Egypt, right?
That's right.
The end of the 14th day is the beginning of the 15th day, when it says, the Feast of Unleavened Bread unto Jah, 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. The first Passover lamb was eaten with unleavened bread.
That's
so
right.
They would eat it that night. The Passover lamb sacrifice, the meal that the Messiah ate, was the first day, the first night of the Passover and unleavened bread festival. They're one and the same. It's just you have to distinguish between the Passover sacrifice lamb and then the meal that you're eating. That meal, the feast, is called the Passover. Also, it's called the Feast of Unleavened Bread. They're one and the same. But the Passover sacrifice is unique because it's not a festival. It's just when you kill the lamb at the end of the 14th.
No, that's good, Brother Sean. It has to be distinguished, and it's something that's not well explained in the world. There's a difference. Sacrifice occurred in the evening, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread began in the nighttime.
That's right. The end of the 14th now, notice that we're putting in the 3rd week. So, because after the 14th, because remember, we're counting from Genesis. This was the 7th. We count the next Sabbath is the 14th. You count 7 again. Obviously, it's going to be 21. The day after 14th is going to be the 15th. It's also going to be the first day of the week. So remember when we began this lesson by saying the set and fixed festivals and how the Passover is on the first day of the week? And it's set and fixed, that day and date. Well, here is now the manifestation of that as we start revealing Jah's Almanac. So it's right here during the 7 days here, the 7-day period from the 15th, which is the end of the 14th. All the leaven is gone out of your home. And for 7 days you eat unleavened bread. The first day is holy. It's a holy convocation. That's why we put this here. And this is the scriptures for it. And then it says the 7th day is holy as well. And then again, all we have to do is count from the first day of Passover to the 7th day of Passover. And
That's
again,
right.
it's set by a pattern from creation week. That creation week sets the pattern for any week-long festivals, whether it's the Feast of Passover, whether it's the Feast of Tabernacles, and also the Feast of Dedication, which is 8 days long, and Tabernacles is 8 days long, but it follows the weekly cycle same way. The 8th day is the beginning of the following week.
That's right. And this is why it's so important to now we take these numbers that Jah's given us, and now once we table these numbers and see it in a chart form or in a table form or in a calendar form, now we can see clearly how Jah's calendar is formulated, and from month to month and from day to day. Now it makes sense.
That's right. That's right, brother. So again, look how far we're going so far. We haven't gone outside of the scripture. We never looked at any lunar cycle, right? We're just looking at Jah's words with a clean mind and a clean heart, trying to put this puzzle together. All right, I think we can move on. But again, remember this third week here. Okay, so we read all of these verses. Now let's continue with verse 7.
Verse 7 from Leviticus chapter 23. In the first day you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work, but ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto Jah 7 days. In the 7th day is an holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. And Jah spake unto Moses, saying.
All right. So, looking at this here, we're coming from the 15th day when they're keeping the Feast of Unleavened Bread, eating the Passover that night. We'll show the chart. Again, 7 days must eat unleavened bread. This is the same 7 days here. 7 days means a week. Notice it says the first day is a holy convocation. This first day is also the first day of the week. It says also that the 7th day is a holy convocation. This 7th day is also the 7th day of the weekly cycle.
That's right.
So before I go there, and we're going to prove the Passover from the foundation of the Torah, just so people can kind of see what we're talking about. And I want to definitely explain that, because having an understanding of when the Passover begins and ends and its function with Jah's Almanac is very important. All right, so again, Passover in the Strongs is Pishak, Pascha. Easter is called Passover one time wrongly in Acts. We don't know that's fake. 49 times, 14 in the Apocrypha, 28. Look at these numbers. 7 times 7, we have the 14, and we have the 28. And all of this is the amount of times that Passover appears. It appears 49 times in the Old Testament, this word Passover. It appears 14 times in the Apocrypha from your Strongs, as you know these things. And it appears 28 times in the New Testament.
Wow. All divisible by the number 7.
Yeah, and all very important kind of like numbers that deal with Jah's Almanac. Yeah. So now outline of biblical usage for this Pishak up here, the Passover, but also you notice it says the sacrifice of the Passover or the animal victim of the Passover, and as well it could be the festival of the Passover. So you would have to know just the context, right? See, a lot of time when people say, try to translate Hebrew words with the English and everything, they'll find one definition and just say, that's what it is, right? And if you have like several definitions, then you know that you would have to read in context to make sure you get an understanding. Is it talking about, Passover, just Passover? Is it the sacrifice, the animal victim? What is it? Again, I'm just showing it from the Strongs. It means Passover, sacrifice of the Passover, the animal victim, right? Used only technically they say the Jewish Passover, the festival, or the victim. So we know that, again, from what we're reading, that you have to sacrifice the Passover lamb in order to have a festival. So you can't have the Passover and then say, and not sacrifice the lamb yet. It's just, that's what you're eating. And you eat that during the 15th. This is in the Greek. Again, the paschal sacrifice. You see that? The word Passover is Pascha. It's the sacrifice. Right? Also, it says here the Paschal lamb, the lamb the Israelites were accustomed to slay on the 14th day of the month of Nisan. And Nisan is also a pagan god. That's, again, it's supposed to be Abib. The point here is that it's the lamb, it's the sacrifice, and then it could be the meal, the Paschal supper, or the feast, right? That way. You notice that they have extending from the 14th to the 20th. But when you read, the scriptures, it's supposed to be from the 14th to the 15th to the 21st.
First, yeah.
But they mix it up because, again, they're starting that sacrifice at the beginning of the 14th and not the end. Okay, let's continue.
Exodus 12, verse 18. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at even, ye shall eat unleavened bread, until the 21st day of the month at even. 7 days there should be no leaven found in your houses.
All right. So notice it says 14th day of the month at evening, and then it says the 21st day at evening. And then when we go back to their definition, it's like the 14th to the 20th. Where's the 21st, so to speak? And how does that work? It could only work scripturally as if you do it the right way. And so when we're looking at this understanding for the Passover, we know that the 14th is a Sabbath. If it's from the 14th day of the month at evening, which is the 15th, and it goes to the 21st day of the month, right here, it's again covering the whole 7 days. But if you do it like how they do it, right? So you notice how they do it, they say it's from the 14th. So if it's from the beginning of the 14th, you have 14, 15, 16, 17, then you have the 20th. And that means it's going to the 20th, but the scriptures includes the 21st day of the month at evening. If you're doing the sacrifice at the beginning of the 14th of Abib, which we know is the 7th day Sabbath, now we know that. Just at that end time when the sun is setting, when you do your sacrifice, we can see that it doesn't match up with scripture. Because 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, which is 7 days, it doesn't give you to the 21st day at all. But the true correct one is above, having at the end of the 14th to the 15th, the 15th being the first day of the week. Again, here's your numericals. Now we have now, as we build Jah's Almanac, we have till 14, and then we even have 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 20. So the first 3 weeks have been already started with us here.
So now you can see clearly that the first day of unleavened bread is on the 15th, and the 7th day of unleavened bread is on the 21st. So you have a 7-day weekly period here for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And now we have the dates to cover that period.
That's right. We have the days, the dates, and we can see this would be the wrong count. So for those people who want to say, hey, the beginning of the 14th is when you have the Passover meal, and then the 15th is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, it's a misunderstanding because they don't understand that Passover is just dealing with the sacrifice of the lamb.
That's right.
And that you do at the end of the 14th. I will try to take a look. So now I apologize again, this little basic understanding here. Here's the 14th of Abib, which is the 7th day of Sabbath. Then you have day 1 of the weekly cycle going through. The sacrifice at sunset is the evening. You're sacrificing the lamb at the end of the 14th, and then you're eating it during the Feast of Unleavened Bread right here the 15th. 7 days, right? We have from that the scripture we just read in Exodus chapter 12 on the 14th day of the month at evening until the 21st day of the month at evening. So we can see it matches up. Here's the 14th, here's the evening, and here's the 21st, and the evening would be the end of that. So that scripture matches up perfect. Then we have the Leviticus chapter 23, verse 5 that says you have to, on the 15th day, you're going to have the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So they sacrifice the lamb, and then they cook it and everything and roast it for probably an hour or two, and they drain the blood, and they're eating it that night with unleavened bread and bitter herbs, and that's the beginning of the Feast of Passover and unleavened bread. 7 days. Then we have another scriptures from Ezekiel chapter 45. You want to read that, brother?
Yes. Ezekiel 45, verse 21. In the first month, in the 14th day of the month, you shall have the Passover, a feast of 7 days. Unleavened bread shall be eaten.
All right. So now if you were to read this without the knowledge, you would say, hey, look at that. It says the 14th day of the month. That's when you started. You shall have the Passover. It's a feast of 7 days. But notice what it's saying. The Passover is a feast of 7 days, just like unleavened bread. The Passover is a feast of 7 days. Unleavened bread shall be eaten. So this here verse should really say in the first month, in the 14th day of the month, at
even.
Just like how the other verses showed in, but it should be the 14th day of the month at evening, because it's a feast of 7 days. So Passover and unleavened bread are one and the same feast. It's matching up perfectly here. Go ahead, brother. Let's scripture.
Deuteronomy 16, verse 4. And there shall be no leavened bread seen with thee in all thy coast 7 days. Neither shall there anything of the flesh which thou sacrificest the first day at even remain all night until the morning. Verse 6. But at the place which Jah thy El shall choose to place his name in, there thou shalt sacrifice the Passover at even, at the going down of the sun, at the season that thou camest forth out of Egypt.
All right. So remember, the 14th day of the month, right, at evening is when the sacrifice goes right through to the 15th. So this is the flesh which thou sacrifice the first day at evening, because it's in between the evenings. It shall not remain all night into the morning. But notice what it says here. Sacrifice the Passover at evening at the what?
Going down of the sun.
That's right. So the sun is setting here. The sacrifice is being done in between the evenings, so to speak. It's like it's ending the 14th and going into the 15th. This is why it says sacrifice the first day, right? It's going, they're 1 and 2 the same time periods. So this is how, one of the reasons why we can say the Passover here proves, like proving the Passover, going along with Jah's Almanac, lets you know that the Passover and Unleavened Bread Festival occurs on the first day of the week.
That's right.
Going along with an understanding of Jah's Almanac. Yeah, and I'm just going to say this quickly here. The 14th day of the first month at evening, we read this, is Jah's Passover. Here's the sacrifice. And on the 15th day of the same month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Again, the Passover is eaten. It goes through. The first day you shall have a holy convocation. Do no servile work. This is right here, the first day. And then we also read before it the 7th day. So these 2 days are the holy days.
Right. And that also, in the same verses you read, that lets us know that the 15th day is the first day of unleavened bread.
That's right. That's right. It is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. That's right, of 7 days. So again, this chart with all of the scriptural verses with it harmonized perfectly. If you were to isolate these verses, by itself, it might be confusing. But this is what we have to do here a little, there a little. I just want to finish off quickly so we got an understanding here. What we've covered the first week to the 7th. We covered the second week to the 14th. We dealt with Passover, sacrificing at the evening of the 14th, beginning the Passover and Unleavened Bread Festival of 1 week. The first day is a holy convocation, and the 7th day is a holy convocation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let me say this. We have the first day to the 7th day. This 7th day is a Sabbath. The waving of the sheaf occurs after this 7th day Sabbath. Many people do the waving of the sheaf after the first day, but it's supposed to be done after the 7th. So notice again in verse 8 it says, you make an offering by fire 7 days. And the 7th day is a holy convocation. As we continue reading,
Jah spake unto Moses, verse 9, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye be come into the land which I give unto you, and shall reap the harvest thereof, then ye shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest unto the priest, and ye shall wave the sheaf before Jah to be accepted for you. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it.
That's right. This morrow after the Sabbath, you see it's the day after or the morning after. It means the morrow after the Sabbath, the morning. Here's that Sabbath. Remember, the 7th day is holy. We know that's the 21st because we just figured it out. And the morning after the Sabbath would be the waving of the sheaf, right?
Right. And that would fall on the 22nd day.
Right. So we have the 21st. This is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. It says, then you have the morrow after the Sabbath. And this morrow after the Sabbath, as we read here, is the 22nd, because we have the Passover festival. Then the 7th-day Sabbath is the 7th day of the festival. The festival is over. Count the morning after that. This is why Sabbath we say the waving of the sheep. Important. And this waving of the sheep is the day, but it's a day where we count.
Verse 14. And ye shall eat neither bread, nor parched corn, nor green ears, until the selfsame day that ye have brought an offering unto your Elohim. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. Verse 15. And ye shall count unto you from the morning after the Sabbath, from the day that ye brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete.
All right, so again, you count from the morrow after the Sabbath, which was, we just read that was the 7th day of unleavened bread. The day that you brought the sheaf, that's that morning, which is the first day of the week. What do you have to count?
7 Sabbaths.
All right.
Right? So that 22nd day of the first month is day 1 of this count that we're reading about.
That's right.
Verse 16, even unto the morrow or morning after the 7 Sabbaths shall ye number 50 days, and ye shall offer a new meat offering unto Jah.
So when we count 7 Sabbaths, 7 times 7 is how much?
49.
That's right, 49 days. And then the day after that, because remember it says the morrow after the 7th Sabbath. When it says number 50 days, it doesn't mean start counting again. This means you have numbered 50 days, right?
Right.
Because you're counting 7 Sabbaths, which is 49. And then after that 7th Sabbath, obviously the day after the Sabbath is the first day of the week. Then you're going to have the Feast of First Fruits, or Feast of Pentecost. And this is how it happens here. So as Brother David said, this waving of the sheaf here is the beginning of that count, and you're going to end up counting 7 Sabbaths. So when we do this first count here, we see that this is the first Sabbath. What we've covered so far, again, in this understanding, is that we went to the 22nd, and we've even gotten to the 28th in the sense that you could say that we're counting the first Sabbath. But we haven't fully covered it to prove, like, hey, well, how do you know exactly that this month here only has 28 days? Because what if it can it have 29 or 30 or 31? And we know it doesn't really go to 32, 33, 34, 35. But some would say, hey, how do you know it's not the 29, 30, and 31? What makes you so sure that it ends on the 28th, which is going to be in our next lesson? And there's scriptural confirmation and proof that this month has to end on the 28th or the 7th day Sabbath. Praise John, Jahoshua. Thank you for life and knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, man. No, praise Jah. And just from what we can see here, we can see the formulation of the first month of Abib. And, we can see that this month must at least have 28 days.